Maryland lands its biggest recruit ever in five-star Zion Elee.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net, so make sure you guys head over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. Maryland football just landed its biggest, best recruit ever in five-star Zion Elee, which completely changes a lot of different things for Maryland football. I don't know how this happened. I don't know when it happened. I don't know exactly how things went down. But this weekend, I know all of you guys saw that Maryland landed five-star edge Zion Elee. And the news kind of came out of nowhere, I would say. I don't think anybody was prepared for Maryland to land Zion Elee. Obviously, he was a name on the list that a lot of us were considering, that a lot of us were curious about. Could Mike Locksley get a guy like this? I honestly didn't think it was going to happen in this class. I didn't think that after the year that we had, where we won one Big Ten game, we didn't have a good year. Our offense looked bad. Our defense looked bad. Everything looked bad. Things didn't mesh well. Things weren't going together the right way. I didn't think Maryland football was going to be able to land, arguably, not like a top 50 recruit in the nation, not a top 25 recruit in the nation, a top top two-ish talent in the nation, and five-star edge Zion Elee. I didn't think that this was going to happen. I didn't think this was possible. But the fact that we start our 2026 class off with an absolute bang, like this is an absolute bang. This is a game changer. This is a program changer. This is a class changer. And you just don't normally get these guys at a school like Maryland. And this guy, if he decides to stick with Maryland and sign with Maryland, he will be the number one recruit ever, and no matter the class that Maryland football has landed. Number one recruit ever in terms of the rankings, in terms of the 247 rankings, and even the other websites. I think On3 had him as the number one player in the entire class. 247 has him as the number two ranked player in the entire class. And so you land this kid, Zion Elee, and you look at the 2026 class and you say, does this class have a chance to be better than the star-studded 2025 class that Maryland was able to sign? Didn't have anyone really flip at the last moment, was able to sign most of that class and get most of those guys. You say, do the Terps have the opportunity to get a better class in the 2026 class than their 2025 class? Because if they are able to, Mike Locksley could be building something. And how do you rebound from a horrible year where everything went wrong? You go out there and recruit, and you start getting some of these star, five-star types of guys. And I always say this: Maryland football needs to get as many 4 stars from the DMV area as they possibly can. I said it's going to be really tough to get the next level 5-star kids because there's only about, 25 of those in the nation, and they're really tough to land. And the fact that you get a guy like this is really, really cool. Now, there is a couple things that do concern me with it. It's early. It's really early to be able to land a guy like this, to be able to get, land a guy like Zion Elee, who's the 5-star edge. 6'3" and a half, has all the tools that you want. It's early in the 2026 cycle. We know in present day recruiting and how everything goes with the transfer portal and all those different things. A lot of things are going to change. And it's hard to keep these guys committed for a while. But that's what I think is part of this. Part of the recruiting is keeping guys committed. Once you get a 5-star number 2 ranked player in the entire class, number 1 ranked on some people's board, you got to be able to keep some of these guys. And I think Maryland football clearly did something. I don't know if it's NIL. I don't know what the case is. I don't know how Maryland was exactly able to land this kid. Clearly, something has happened with Maryland's NIL game in terms of football and basketball, because a similar thing happened with Derik Queen. And in today's game, you got to get some money. I don't know if the Under Armour money's starting to come in, but our 2025 class, we were able to land some really good players that we haven't been able to quite get in the past. And Zion Elee is even another level of it. Malik Washington's a top-rated recruit, but he's not quite the talent that Zion Elee is, or even Jalen Gilchrist, top 100 recruit. He's not a top 10 type of guy. And so I think Maryland's recruiting in terms of all sports has kind of gotten to a new level. I'm guessing some Under Armour money's coming in, some NIL. I know there was a donor and stuff. So I don't know exactly what the case is, but it has to be something like that. But this kid has a chance to come in and be a star for Maryland football and be an absolute difference maker that we just haven't been able to have at a position that Maryland football hasn't been able to have high-level players at. We've had a good quarterback like a Talia. We've had some really good receivers at Maryland for a while now in the last couple of years. And recently, Ty Felton, of course, just had a record-type season for Maryland football and was a Biletnikoff semifinalist and was top in the country in yards. And we've had guys like that. Even on the offensive line, we have guys that are playing in the NFL and things like that. But when I talk about Maryland and making the next step, I always say it's in the trenches, defensive line, offensive line, and to be able to make a next step. Zion Elee is exactly the type of guy you want. You want an elite rusher, and Maryland not only gets an elite of like a good Big Ten rusher, they get a guy that potentially we could look at when he gets to school a couple of years down the line. We might be like, this guy is a first-round draft pick. Like, he's that type of talent. And when you bring in a kid like this, you just hope he reaches that type of potential. And I think when you try and win college football games, and if you want to get to a place where maybe you're a 10-win team or you get to a place where you're consistently top 25, you need these types of recruits. You need these types of edge rushers to get to the quarterbacks, to get to some of these really top-end players in the Big Ten, because a lot of Big Ten offensive lines are really good. And I was reading a scouting report. It's pretty interesting. It says he's one of the more complete edge prospects in recent memory at this stage of the evaluation process. Ahead of his junior season, it feels as if he was built in a lab to get after quarterbacks. Verified at 6'4", 220. So we can still add some college weight to him too, which I think is very important. Verified athletic markers are good enough to compare to the top 247 caliber prospects. So there's a lot of things that that 247, this Hudson guy wrote about him. They say that they feel like he's an elite athlete too at the position and is an absolute freak in terms of his lateral explosive and can quickly move gap to gap or chase down ball carriers from the weak side. So this guy sounds like a complete type of edge prospect, a guy that, and that's what you get when you get some of these 5-star rated players. You get a guy that's usually pretty complete and pretty ready to go. And that's what I'm most excited for, a guy to walk onto campus and be a really good mark player for Maryland football. And I can't wait to see the rest of this 2026 class, because if Mike Locksley can start doing things like this, I think that's really important. I think the next name that Zion Elee might try and go after is this kid, Emmanuel from Georgetown Prep, right here in the DMV area is rated as the number 5 ranked player in the class. So that's the next guy Maryland's really going to look at. But Zion Elee, a St. Francis kid, and we continue to recruit well in the DMV in the last couple of classes. And Michael actually doing a really good job recruiting. And I can't wait to see what he continues to do with this. Maryland basketball lost to Purdue, but I still feel excellent about Maryland's team. I'll talk about that after this ad from Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's a guaranteed perfection in every single bite, and right now you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. So Maryland basketball, switching gears, I honestly thought I feel really good about this team, even despite losing to Purdue. We lost by 5 to Purdue on the road, 83-78, a game that Maryland absolutely could have won, to be completely honest. And another game similar, it was a really similar game. Actually, I honestly thought it was like not identical, but just really similar to the Marquette game where Purdue just went on when they went on the run at the right time. Basketball's a game of runs. Everybody knows that. It's about going on runs, whether it's a 10-point swing, 8-point swing, whatever it is. Basketball is a game of runs. And I think Maryland basketball has done a good job of going on runs in these games and playing at a really high level the entire season. And we're really talented. And I think a lot of people are seeing that. We're a top 25 type of talented team. Now, we haven't beaten a ton of really good teams, so we're going to have to get some more Big Ten wins on the schedule and on the resume before we actually probably are ranked in the top 25. But Maryland continues to compete and look like a really high-level team. I just think when I look at it, I think in terms of our 2 losses, Marquette and Purdue, they just went on runs at the very end of the game that was favorable to them and allowed them to win. They went on the runs at the right time, and Maryland had their runs earlier on, and then it would be close the whole second half, and then Purdue goes on a run late in the last 5 minutes. And part of it was just their point guard, Smith. That kid really had a good game against Maryland. He hadn't been playing maybe up to a lot of people thought he could this season. A lot of people thought he'd be Big Ten Player of the Year, like I said, but Braden Smith kind of took over, and Maryland made some mistakes. He actually played 40 minutes. I didn't realize that. Played 40 minutes, but he had 24 points. But Maryland made some mistakes on some ball coverage against him later on the game. We were playing too much. We would go over the screen, but it was just too much drop coverage, and he was still able to pull up down the stretch, and he was able to make a couple threes that really kind of allowed them to win the game. But he kind of took over, had a huge game with 24 points and 10 assists. I just thought the coverage on the screens just weren't good enough, as well as Trey Kaufman-Renn had a really good game. What really hurt was that Julian Reese got into foul trouble, and Derik Queen didn't want to pick up fouls because we obviously needed him, and so that made it tough to play physical defense on Trey Kaufman-Renn, so he was able to go off. But I honestly didn't really feel like Purdue was necessarily that much better than us. I felt like it was a pretty close matchup. I thought they just made more shots down the stretch. I thought it really came down to that. And I thought that if on the ball screens, I thought if we either just switched, I would even have mind just switching against them and not letting Smith pull up, or just making our center or whoever the big man guarding the screen was higher up, because he Smith kind of killed us with doing that. But I still felt really good about our team. We led for a lot of the game. We led going into the half 36-31. We just lost the second half 42-52. So this year's team has been pretty good in the first half. We just haven't been as good in the second half. I think that's something that we definitely are going to have to work on, definitely continue to get better at, is the second half of games, because we win that game if we're just a little bit better in the second half. But clearly a back and forth game against a Purdue team that is a really talented squad. They made a lot of threes down the stretch, which made it tough for us to stick with them. But we also saw some really good performances from some Maryland players. Derik Queen, man, this kid is special. He has a chance. This has a chance to be one of the best freshman season ever for Maryland basketball, and he's surpassing expectations. What he did in that Purdue game, he was the best player on the court, I thought. 26 points, 12 rebounds, and then we finally saw the three ball go in for Derik Queen. We know that's in his bag. We know that's something he's worked on, but he made 2 threes down the stretch, which were absolutely huge. And at the time, I thought they were going to win us the game. They didn't end up winning us the game, but I thought the threes down the stretch were going to allow us to win the game. But he was absolutely huge in the game with 26 points. The way he shot the ball, the way he shot the three ball, what he did down low, he's just a really good basketball player. And at the end of the day, when you're 6'10" and you can move the way he does, and you're really talented, a lot of people call him like a Jokic type, and I think it's a fair kind of comparison. I know Jokic is the best player in the world, but the way he plays, it's honestly really similar. It's a slow down, old man's type of game with a really high IQ, old man's type of game while doing some of this new school type of stuff. It's just some really cool stuff from Derik Queen. And he's night in and night out, he's been the best player on the court. And what I think is, I haven't seen him struggle in a game yet, like in a big game against a good opponent. He hasn't struggled every single time he stepped up to the plate and had a really good game. And he did that again against Purdue with 26 points, 12 rebounds. And I thought Gillespie also played really well with 18 points, 4 assists. He shot the ball well from three and was able to do some stuff, as well as Rodney Rice. He made some big threes with 13 points. I just think that really hurt was Julian Reese fouling out towards the end and being in foul trouble the whole game. I think we got to learn how to keep Reese out of foul trouble a little bit. Sometimes it's good to have our lineup with Queen at the 5, and then we go to Fargapari at the 4, and we can kind of run a 4-round-1 with that, and there's a little bit more space. But I do think that we want Queen out there, and I mean, we want Julian Reese and Derik Queen out there, especially towards the end of the game. And I do think that's important, and I do think that that's something that we want to continue to work on and get better at, because those two guys are really good when they're playing together on the same court at the same time. That's definitely something that we want to happen. But I do still feel really good about this team. I thought we got limited bench production, which kind of hurt us, and we're going to have to figure out. Malachi Palmer didn't play in the game. I would not have minded seeing Palmer a little bit, because I thought we just didn't get a lot of production off the bench. Like Deshaun Harris-Smith didn't do a ton. Kapari didn't do a ton in terms of points. We only scored 3 points off the bench. So points off the bench is definitely something I'm concerned about. I wish we had a real shooter or scorer off the bench at the guard position that could help us. But I think overall, I feel really good about this team still. And I think we have a chance to still be a really good team. How can the Terps rebound from this loss? Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports app gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Maryland basketball lost its second game of the year, but I still think we have a really good chance of rebounding and winning our next really 4 games for Maryland basketball, which I feel really good about for the Terps. So when I look at the schedule, I think Maryland has a really good chance at continuing to win their next 4 games. Next game we play is on Tuesday against St. Francis, which I think is pretty much a guaranteed win, which is as close as you get to a guaranteed win as you can get. And then after this game against St. Francis, we have a big game against Syracuse on Saturday, December 21st. But I still feel really good about the Terps winning that game against Syracuse, a Syracuse team that I think isn't that good. So even after losing this game to Purdue, I think we win the next 3-4 games. Maryland Eastern as well. We play in the next game. And then Washington, January 2nd. Close to the new year, which is a Washington team that's not good, which will lead to Oregon on January 5th. And then from there, it's going to be pretty tough to start winning games, and games will get closer once we get to January 5th against number 12 Oregon. But the next 4 games, I think we win. So I honestly think Maryland basketball has a really good chance at rebounding, and I feel really good about the Terps' chances in the next four games. And then Oregon team that looks really good so far this year. I think they had a tough loss against UCLA, but besides that, they've been a really tough team. And I think that one thing is I think to start building a good resume, a really good resume to a great resume, we're gonna have to start winning some of these bigger types of games. But I feel good with where Maryland's at in terms of the Big Ten. I think the Purdue game, I still feel really good about this team. I think there's things that I want to see get better. I don't want to say this is a perfect team, but think about where we were last year at this time. Uh, we were near rock bottom. We were pretty bad last year at this time. This was a Maryland team that just wasn't good at this point in the season, and we had taken some horrible losses. We lost some bad games. And I thought it was going to be really hard for Maryland. It was going to be really hard for Maryland to dig themselves out. But this team doesn't really have to dig themselves out. I think when we've lost games, the 2 games we've lost are the 2 top 10 teams in the country, and we've lost by a combined, what is it, 9 points? Like 5 points in against Purdue, 4 points against Marquette, against 2 top 10 teams. You feel okay about that if you're Maryland basketball, where last year we couldn't even beat a Davidson type of team. We couldn't figure out how to beat that type of team. And now it's a Maryland team that I feel really good about. I do think that it's going to be. I think we need to find some more bench production. I think DeFari Gapari has started to play really well, but I think Deshaun Harris-Smith has to find a way to step up into a more confident offensive role off the bench. Same with Jalen Young, because I think it's tough when we bring out Rodney or we bring out Gillespie or even Selton Miguel. I think we need guys that can produce at a high level, and I think we're having trouble kind of finding that off the bench. But I think that's the next way the Terps rebound. And I think Julian Reese needs to work on not being in foul trouble. Like Derik Queen or Julian Reese can't always be in foul trouble. Have to figure out how to play defense without fouling. Even if you give up some buckets because you're playing just hands up defense and you're not fouling, I think that's okay sometimes. I also think Jordan Geronimo coming back is definitely something to keep an eye on. I'm not sure about his spot on this team right now in terms of the rotation with how well Gapari's been playing, but I do think him coming back will help the Terps if we need some big man depth that I think could really be important. But I think the Terps are in a really good spot, and I expect them to rebound from this loss with 4 straight wins to get us right back to where we need to be, ready to get going and start continuing to build this resume with a couple of easy wins and then a game against Syracuse, which I think it's a Syracuse team that's not amazing, but a team that is good enough to be able to compete. And I think that that's something that's going to matter at the end of the day. And I think that's going to be interesting for Maryland basketball That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys all for listening to Locked on Terps.